Welcome, my name is Wade Winningham, and I'm a principal developer at Power Home Remodeling. So, from the people here who are not from Power, how many of you guys have worked on the same Ruby application for like over 5 years? Wow, that's a few, but not as many as I thought. So how about 10? Anybody longer than that? That's, wow, just a couple. Wow. So I've been working on Power's application for 18 years now. We started in 2007. So this is literally my 18th year with it. And I'm here today to tell you a little about Power and Nitro, the app that powers our business. A policy that's led to its growth that's a little bit controversial, how we modularized it, and then showcase some of our open source projects that maybe you guys can get into your own applications. So Power's been in business since 1992. So what does Power actually do? We sell windows, doors, siding, and solar solutions to existing homeowners. Power's actually a very employee-focused company. As Jenny Gray said earlier, we say we don't hire people to sell windows, but rather we sell windows to hire people. And when someone asks where I work, and I tell them I work in a place that sells windows, doors, and siding, I can see on their face that this is where they think I work. Guaranteed, that's the reaction I get from people. Now, these photos are from one of our warehouses, but it's not where we actually have office space. We do have a headquarters that's down the road here outside of Philadelphia. It is in actually a former power plant, which is kind of cool. And we do have a lot of offices around the country. And our HQ is the base of operations for our business technology team. Many of them are here. We are like a tech company within Power where we build Nitro. And we think of it as the operating system for our business. It's primarily built with Ruby, Rails, MySQL, some Postgres, mostly for GIS capabilities, TypeScript, React, and Swift for our mobile applications. Now, Nitro started on Rails 1.23, like on 2007. I guess that was the current version back then. So we've been through quite a number of Ruby and Rails upgrades over the years. And this is literally the timeline of all of our upgrades for Ruby and Rails over those years. It's something we keep as part of presentations that we give even today. And I just wanted to give a big shout out to FastRuby.io and OmbuLabs, who's helped us through a lot of the upgrades from 4 through 6, which were some painful ones for us, but they were a huge help. And so we heartfeltly recommend them whenever we can. Now, when we started back in 2007, Power had nothing but spreadsheets and a single user app that was written in Microsoft Access. And it just was not keeping track with them. They literally had to yell down the hall to get people to get out of the app to make any changes. And while that was a pain, one of the biggest pains was that the sales director would spend nights and weekends updating individual spreadsheets for sales rep statistics so that he could mail them out every single morning to all of his reps. That wasn't really a particularly good use of his time. So they needed a way to basically, centralize that data and make it accessible and scalable, which resulted in this, their very, very first page of a Ruby on Rails app. It was me starting this thing, and within like a month, they had this up and running, and they were extremely happy. Now, that was really small, but now anybody could log in and see their stats on any day, and the data was imported from their existing system, so it was really bare bones, but it kind of lit a fire under them. Now, looking at that same page today, it's got a lot of different things on it, and it's expanded quite a bit. And we just basically molded it over the years to keep up to date with the increasing demands of the business and the employees. Now, that obviously went through a lot of growth. And our app overall, to drive the entire business, has grown a lot over the years. And from that first page to today, Nitro currently has over 3 million lines of code, of Ruby code. And that's not including some apps that we've split out of our monolith. And while it's grown simply by adding features throughout the entire business, I want to talk today about a policy we have that has helped us grow to a code base this size And whenever it's brought up in candidate interviews and with people we talk to, it causes them to raise an eyebrow. And that's our policy on build versus buy. Now, this isn't a strict rule, but when it makes sense for the business, we prefer to build something ourselves rather than buy it. Now, this can be controversial. The Sidekick Wiki has a page all about why building something yourself is going to cost significantly more than buying it. And in the context presented, Mike's right. But buying a service or software isn't always the best for your business. It can be a bit of a minefield with confusing pricing plans that initially sound great, but result in outrageously large bills later down the road. We like to say we put our culture in code. And when you build an app for your business, you have to learn how your business truly works. You get knowledge you'd never gain by trying to squeeze your app into somebody else's. You get control over what your business needs and when they need it. And you're not making processes suffer because of generalized software. And your business is going to grow. And as you scale, the services you use typically will cost much more as you do. Surprise price increases from outside systems can be a tax on your business. And for a business our size, that could add hundreds of thousands of dollars to cost, all to support features we never asked for or even need in some cases. An example of what I'm talking about is around job applicants. Now, these are some screenshots of just a handful of sites that I found of companies that help you manage your recruiting process. We used to use one of them, but then one day we got an email saying, we're going out of business in 30 days, get your data, and so on. So we didn't feel like getting put into that same situation again with another company. And so since our trust was shot, fortunately we were able to pay them to keep their servers running while we built our own solution. And in 6 months with a team of 3 developers with Ruby on Rails, we built our own recruiting system that's now better for us, more tightly integrated with our systems. It's better than anything we could buy, and we continue to make it better every day. We're not paying for features we'd never use. It's exactly what we need. And we own our own data. And obviously with job applicant data, candidate information, there's security concerns around that. So keeping track of our own data we feel more secure about that. And we don't worry about us going out of business. Recruiting's just another part of Nitro. Another example of a place that went out of business is Pivotal Tracker. Did anybody ever use Pivotal Tracker? A number of you. So we used it a long time ago. And I guess if anybody's there, they don't even have a site anymore, so hopefully you're able to get your data. But based on past experience, we weren't very inclined to just move to a different product. Does anybody here use Jira now? Wow, a few. Do you like it? I don't see any hands. Wow. So, yeah, and even if you haven't used Jira, do you work in a place where one department uses one tool and another uses something else? Like one place uses a Google Doc, another maybe Asana in another department? I mean, that's just, I don't know, just not very consistent. So instead of moving to another service, we built Runway and had our first version up in Ruby on Rails with 4 devs in 4 months. And outside of the whole trust issue, why build it? What we do is we think that what we use to plan and build our software contains really important intellectual property that we don't want to lose. So, and our software, where I'm lost track now, we wanted our entire business to learn to use Agile, so using the same tool across the company has helped teach everybody how to work with Agile the same way as our business technology teams. Different departments don't use their own software, and we never have to buy more licenses. Now, it's not nearly ready yet, but we do have an eye towards open sourcing this one day. Now, we don't exclusively build software from scratch. We do use and support open source. The current version of our messaging app, which is called Connect, is built on top of Matrix, which is open source. So why not use Slack or Discord? We're a really communicative and distributed business, and we want secure messaging and something tightly integrated with our systems. For example, Power has an awesome people experience department, And they plan a lot of events during the year, and more events than there are weeks in the year. And anything around events is customization most messaging clients don't support without a lot of development effort already. So Slack and Discord are great, but rolling our own allows us to keep control of our own data and build the features we need. And we even host in our own cloud on our own data centers. We don't use Azure or Google or AWS. Is it easier to use them? Probably. They just come with all those confusing pricing models I mentioned earlier. And the slightest changes to those pricing models can have a really serious, huge impact on your budget. And if you're wanting to scale your business, we think it's better to hire smart people than to have other people sell you theirs. We kind of see hosting services as their own tax. You host your software with them, even software you write, and then they charge you for it. That's kind of our view into why we host our own stuff. Now, we don't do this for everything. If it's not core to our business, we'll certainly use outside services that best suit our needs. In a lot of these cases, it's best for them to be hosted outside our infrastructure anyway, so if something goes down, we still have access to information to help us diagnose what's happening. We like to invest in the people and applications that give us customized solutions where we own our own data. Does this cost more long-term? Likely, but with less surprises. And although Rails allows us to deliver relatively quickly, you still need time to develop and maintain, for ongoing feature development. But we own our own destiny and we're investing it in ourselves rather than organizations that don't even know us. Now, is this for everybody? Of course not. You have to do what makes sense for you and consider the risks. We don't just jump out of the gate and start building stuff, but it's always on the table. But if you're growing, then you are going to be the best at growing both your business and your software. Now, after many years of building and growing, Nitro grew into a monolith. A large code base leads to a lot of problems, and at our worst point, our CI builds literally took 4.5 hours for a single build, not to mention problems with code organization. So who's here has heard of Packwork? Oh, good number of people. If you haven't, it's all about compartmentalizing large monoliths like Nitro. However, Packwork wasn't a thing when we needed to start doing this. At that point, Stefan Hagemann's original book on the topic was Component-Based Rails Applications, or Cobra. It was in beta, but we dove into it anyway. Does anybody use or have an application written with, as a component-based Rails application? Wow, a couple. I'm really surprised. That's awesome. So I asked because I met Stefan last year at RailsConf, and he seemed really surprised and excited to see what we've done with Cobra. So by the time Packwork was introduced, we had already had years behind us with Cobra. And while most seem to have abandoned it, and obviously there's a few stragglers here, that's awesome, we stuck with it. And having paid the time and cost by generating the tools, generators, and docs around setting up new components, it's become part of our everyday workflow. Now for time, I'm going to keep things at a high level, but I want to talk about the differences between these two and what's common between them. So today, if your app has grown to what you call a monolith and you want to check out you want to modularize it, you should check out Packwork. It's called gradual modularization for a reason. I had to practice that a lot, saying modularization, because that's a really hard word to say. Now, based on this note on the Cobra website, Hagemann himself would agree that, yeah, Packwork is what you should probably start with. It just provides a lower barrier of entry. So I'm not here today to try to convince you to use Cobra over Packwork, but rather to show you the differences along with some tools that we've written to help manage things. Now, at a high level, Packwork initially helps organize your app folder into packs directories. Now, at this stage, you're just moving files around, and your packs of related code still rely on the gems and configuration of your overall application. Packwork's tools help you identify and deal with interaction between packs to prevent circular dependencies and isolate a pack's code. And if you're just organizing code, you can stop here. Many who start, this is where they stop. They don't ever make it past this stage. But if your goal is to eventually lift your pack outside of your app into its own app and repo, you need to take it to the next step and make it a Rails engine. It still is in the same place, but it's now its own self-contained mini Rails app with the configuration and setup it needs in order to survive as a Rails engine that lives outside of your app. And then once your pack is an engine and your app's integrations with it are ready, you can lift it out into a completely separate app. Now that makes it sound a lot easier than it really is, but at a high level, that's the steps you have to go through. Component-based Rails apps go straight to a Rails engine. Both help you make the transition from monolith to separate repos easier because you can tackle decoupling iteratively rather than all at once. The Runway project I mentioned earlier is an example of an app we extracted outside of our Nitro monolith. It used to be a component, but was lifted out and now it survives in its own repo and application. So that's the first step in making it open source. Now we just have to make it a generalized app that anybody could use. Now, if Cobra seems like a harder approach, that's because it is. But recall, we started way before Packwork existed, and we really dedicated ourselves to the journey. Now, there's no magic wand. You don't just start using it and fix all your monolith problems. You have to have a very strong commitment from the business and your development team. Packwork and Cobra require devs to rewire your brains a bit from what you're used to working with a normal Rails app. You need to treat how code interacts between packs or components similar to how they would be as if they were external services, because if you're going to lift them out, it's going to be an external service. So decoupling components and libraries requires a lot of time, and that's why you need the business support. Now, we started this journey about 8 or 9 years ago, and today all of our teams are led by a lead developer who's experienced enough to help guide new team members so that we're always on our path. We just made it part of our culture, and as I said earlier, we put our culture in code. Now, you obviously begin with your first component, and we chose this intentionally long and nasty-looking name to boost our desire to get rid of it. The benefits of doing just this, though, is pretty underwhelming. Everything being in one place really wasn't impacting our 4-hour build times. So for a quick win, we decided to move all of our models into their own component to split up our code base. And by running 2 component tests in parallel, we had a 50% build time improvement. So that was cheating, but it gave us the confidence to keep moving forward. Now this diagram logistically shows our real starting point for flattening out our initial gargantuan application. And it didn't take long before things looked more like this, which is part of what Packwork and Cobra help manage, the complexity that you start to grow. Now, this diagram it's dense enough today that it would not be discernible on the screen. So this was just an example of something from a long time ago. So something that makes it a lot easier for us is a generator for bootstrapping new components. Existing libraries that make it straightforward to jump into development quickly, and documentation that walks developers through what they need to know without any friction. Our build times today are about 90% faster in some cases than at our worst point. And surprisingly, it's getting better, even with a still growing code base. Now, this is partly because we can check a PR's code changes and determine what components it affects and only execute tests in those components. We've also made tests more efficient, and a huge shout out to Evil Martians. They're getting a big shout out at the conference this year. They helped us reduce some build times with some of the techniques that they use for test running and stuff. We're still striving to shrink it further, but it's headed in a very good direction. Now, upgrading a monolith that's built on Cobra is obviously more complicated, but it's primarily dealing with merge conflicts and gems that need updating. Updating gem files entails running bundle update across all your components. So if you've got 160 of them, that's a lot of bundle updates you have to run. But we do have a tool to help manage that I'll mention shortly. So this is a list of some of the stuff we get from Cobra over Packwork. But when it comes down to it, we've gotten faster build times, and we finally realized the ability to extract code out of our monolith. Both help our developers ship faster, and why Power at a business level continues its support. So why not just use Packwork installing and quit calling it Cobra? We're basically starting at step 2 of Packwork, so that's a good question. We simply hasn't made it a priority to investigate, but I am hoping to chat with some of the Packwork folks here at RubyConf tomorrow to see if that's something worth investigating. After all, we do use Packwork as a double check to make sure we cover undeclared and circular dependencies. So this is just part of our build process now. Now, I mentioned that we have some tools that help us be efficient. I want to shift gears a bit to talk about some open source projects we've created. And some of these are Cobra related, but not all of them. So Cobra Commander is a command line tool for Cobra applications. I used it earlier to show our component count. It can list component dependencies, display a tree of them, and orchestrate commands to run within all components, a single component, or a component and its dependencies. It's a great tool, especially when updating Ruby or Rails versions. For example, we can use it to perform a bundle update across all of our components with a single command. So it makes it incredibly useful when we're doing that. And I had to zoom in a lot, but I did like a graph of our recruiting component. And like I said, it looked like a smudge if you zoom out to see the whole thing. But I tried to zoom in as best I could. So Power Tools is actually a collection of useful gems for all of our apps. Some are Cobra, some are not, but there's a lot of them. So I encourage you to go check it out if you want. I'm just going to focus on a couple. So one issue that a monolith has is a bloated schema file. And it's prone to merge conflicts. Now, Edge Stitch breaks up our schema by component into partial schemas. Nitro has over 1,500 tables, and you can only imagine the amount of churn having a single schema file would have. I'm pretty sure our developers would revolt. But we believe that a component that owns a model should own its underlying schema. So when performing database operations, Edge Stitch stitches the schema partials of a component and its dependent components into exactly the schema it needs. This helps with those nasty merge conflicts quite a bit because our schema is broken up across components. And if you're curious why this is SQL versus Ruby format, it's because at one time, you could update a schema with information that Rails couldn't replicate with schema.rb, and we just simply never changed, never updated it. We think schema.rb can do it now, so it's something we plan to do at some point to convert it to use either format. Now, consent is a gem that helps build a dynamic authorization system that persists permission assignments to the database. It's built on top of can, and I guess we chose consent because that sounded better than can. But it makes it easy to set up complicated permissions. It can be used in any Rails application, not just Packwork or Cobra. And this example, it basically gives a new role permissions to update projects that are only associated within a user's department. So how does that work? This config basically says for a project model, we can allow an update action that can restrict a user to seeing projects for their assigned department, all projects or none in the UI. And basically, we store that in the database, so when the application loads, it basically translates all this DSL stuff into a can instructions so that you can use its methods normally applying the appropriate filter conditions. So it makes it pretty slick to easily add permissions and track them. And last but not least is our design system, Playbook. So if you like some of the Nitro screenshots I've shown, you can use this same system in your applications. Unlike almost every other UI system out there for Rails, it's not based on Tailwind CSS. I see I have a lot of support. I literally looked this up the other day. I'm like, there's literally no other design system that doesn't use Tailwind CSS. I'm like, I just want to stab my eyes out. So to me, that's a big feature. It sounds like I've got a lot of support. So here's a simple example for a Rails view. So Playbook has allowed our developers to simply drop in UX patterns without even thinking about it. Plus, you can use it with React and Swift. So There's a lot in there now, but we'd love to expand it further with your feature suggestions and contributions. So we really encourage you to check it out if you're interested. And if you're curious to look through more, you can check out all the PowerHem home gems on Ruby Gems. We've got a few there. It's just coincidental that I showcased some of the ones that I talked about. I guess alphabetically, it was the first ones I encountered. And we do have some open positions, by the way. If you're interested, check us out at our booth in the sponsors area. And if you have questions, I'll hang out here for a little bit, but otherwise find me floating around the conference or any one of my colleagues. We'll all be wearing these shirts tomorrow, so we will have a very big presence. So look for us. And then thanks for all your time, and especially for the RailsConf crew for all their great hard work that they've done for us.